Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So why is the government so broken? Why couldn't they process my complaints effectively? Why didn't they investigate effectively? Because all three political parties fail miserably. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Independents as well. Nobody came out and tried to really get things together. They all just play their position. There's a little bit something to be said about politician here or there, but that's about it. That's why it's very important for the War on Poverty plan that I present, my 5.4 trillion plan, the global farming plan, what have you, to have its own committee, okay? Its own funding separate from the government. You collect those taxes, it goes to a committee directly. The government can play their budget games all day and act like idiots, right? They're not supposed to, but hey, it wouldn't affect that committee. Say it's funded with maybe $200 billion a year, 250 in taxes. And they effectively build small homes, tiny homes, affordable housing. They have a farming program, $10 billion a year for law enforcement, okay? These things are key here. And on top of whatever money is going to the poor as it is, with, inflation considered, okay? So if they want to spend less on the poor, there should be a law that the committee gets more. And we effectively, or that committee effectively, solves those issues in a way that's quantifiable, where there's oversight, with auditors tracking the money in real time. FBI agents are hired to track the money in real time, maybe have their own office just for that purpose. Whatever's cost effective, whatever makes sense in that regard. There's a YouTube channel for every region in America to keep people up to date on how the money's being spent. And they come in around 30, 32,000 because it's been inflation. I used to say 30,000 per unit with land purchases included. But now it's been some time. I've been saying it for so long that it's now at like 32,000 per unit or something, or whatever it is now. That means we could build 1 million tiny homes with land purchases including running water, AC, cooker, mattress, okay, for $32 billion. It's a drop in the bucket when you look at their budget. You hear Trump talking about bringing in $9 trillion in new business to America, the tariffs. When you hear him talk about, cracking down on big pharma, which means that there will be less Medicare and Medicaid spending. Unless I'm missing something here. It should be, unless they're doing something funny, it should translate to just that. Which means the government overall would be paying less every year. Which means there's money to spend, especially if you look at things like maybe cutting the military budget a little bit, restructuring the school to get people off welfare, because every year more people get on welfare, right? People die, people get on welfare. So if you start restructuring the school system within a few years, with 4 years or so, you'll see a drastic change, okay? That's a key part to pay for the War on Poverty plan when it comes to the argument of why don't we just pay down the debt instead? Well, first of all, you people have a long history of neglecting the poor. Before there was a massive debt, you neglected the poor. 60 years ago, you neglected the hell out of the poor. To the extreme. One of those civil rights acts that took place around 60 years ago, that was from you neglecting the poor so much that you enslaved them. And there was segregation before that. And they desegregated. And you kept neglecting the poor. Then the debt starts rising, you start using that as an excuse to keep neglecting the poor. And I've become somewhat of an economist over the years, correcting you people on your obvious mistakes. Because when it comes to being an economist, okay, just like when it comes to martial arts, what matters most is emphasizing what matters most. There's a bunch of stuff you don't need to know. You don't need to know, for example, if you're going to try to be the best martial artist, fair and square, you don't need to know the name of every martial art, or every martial art weapon, or every famous martial artist. You need to know what matters most, and so it is with being an economist. You don't need to know every type of item that's sold, or all the famous economists, or their theories. You need to understand supply and demand, and the Federal Reserve. You need to understand interest. You need to understand why supply side economics, aka trickle down economics, doesn't logically work. And it's never worked. You need to understand why Reaganomics is a bunch of BS. Why they're playing stupid about the IT boom. They're acting like that, the computers and new TVs and new technologies and video games and movies had nothing to do with the economy getting better. And they wanted to pretend there was just, giving tax cuts to the rich. But when you apply that to every time the rich has gotten tax cuts all throughout history, what do you get? Solid evidence that trickle-down economics does not work, and you can't ignore the elephant in the room when it comes to Reaganomics, and that is the IT boom. And my goodness, video games, for example, became such a profitable industry that they surpassed movies. And that's one of those things you don't need to know to be a very good economist where it matters most. To beat all these conservative economists with their illogical arguments. To beat all these liberal economists who want to, spend money in a way that's not cost effective. Who ignore the poor with their economic theories. Some of them do, some of them don't. You need to focus on the core things, bread, table issues, food, housing, healthcare, Social Security, the school system, the job system, the way people learn, how oppression and ignoring the different ways that people learn affect the economy. How ignoring the fact that most people come from a long line of people who had an oral tradition. How that affects the economy when you ignore that. It's very important to understand how people think, how they learn. When people are at war and they're running psyops, they're trying to influence the sentiments, the emotions, the behaviors, and the decisions of people, the judgment. So the government has a pretty good understanding of how people think, and they've had it for a long time. They use their understanding of how people think to sabotage them in war and make them less efficient. So when you look at this economy, when you look at the financial system we have, it's the result of corporate partnerships who have certain commonalities with each other. They come together and they say, hey, you're my type of person, or guys like us, and they sabotage the people who learn differently. That's a huge part of this. And so again, I just want to close up with this video by saying it is very important that America establishes another committee to take care of the homeless, to take care of the housing issues, to stay on top of these things, the farming, what have you, and to audit. It wouldn't hurt to give them a bit more money to audit Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, and Big Pharma, what have you. Okay, if the government was taking care of these things, for example, when Trump came to office, he would have cut the check day one, $100 billion to build 1 million units for the homeless. Another check wouldn't hurt. On top of that, $30 billion to build 1 million tiny homes for poor people and homeless people across the nation. Money for farm programs. These things are urgent issues. They're not being addressed with the urgency that it requires. The mayor of Sacramento not too long ago said that homelessness was the #1 issue. When we look at the polls, it was immigration and homelessness were like the major issues nationwide. But yet you hear these people not taking action. Trump promised that he would build cities for the homeless, give them the care they need, what have you. Been over 100 days, no significant progress. The closest thing to it was shifting some money from migrants to the vets. You see, this is typical of the government. Biden did the same thing. Trump in his last term did the same thing. Obama kind of, didn't do anything significant about the homeless problem. Clinton, Bush, you name it. Reagan. So when we look at this thing, it's clear. We need a committee of people who will end homelessness and stay on top of it. Never again should there be over 100,000 children on the streets, 6,000 of them totally on their own. What for? For whose benefit? Why? You have me, a humanitarian son, the son of a brain surgeon, going on and on about this, handing out cards and flyers, or papers rather, and getting no response. The community doesn't respond. The government doesn't respond. They just waste money. They think that it's good for their social engineering plan. I've watched in my lifetime, I'm 43 years old, America go from having some hope, from having a new hope. The idea of freedom, fidelity, integrity, justice, moral clarity, to having no hope. To come into a situation where people are insane if they reproduce. And for the last 16 years, I've been trying to reason with the videos alone, and I've been trying to reason with before that. I have a song from 1997 when I was 16 years old. 97 or early 98. And I said, these attractive females out here, they just want to ball and ignore the deeper call. Not just some ghetto chick or some obvious gold digger, all of them. The average middle class female who's attractive. I said, you all through stressing me. I've been trying to reason with you on AOL, GeoCities, Yahoo. But you didn't care. I was trying to keep you from getting raped. But you didn't want to listen. You didn't want to organize. It's insane. I remember with my first girlfriend around that same time, I think this is my story. I called her friend's dad because she said her friend's dad was molesting her. And I called him up and, I saw myself as, tough guy at the time, what have you. And I said he better stop doing that. And he tried to pull the adult card, right? He said, who are you? Da, 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 da. If she told you that she's lying, da, 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 and you'll get in big trouble, why are you calling me? Da, 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 da. The abuse of authority in this nation is appalling. In every nation, it's appalling. So I get treated. Since I was a teenager, 27 years ago, people did not want to hear me. When I said we need to get together, we need to organize for a moral revolution, I would describe it as a Christian revolution back then. True Christianity, not churchianity, not propaganda, but the true principle, they didn't want to do it. There's a bunch of people who want to self-direct like Freemasons and they'll social engineer. And now, because of their arrogance, there is no hope for the future. But people are insane if they think they shouldn't scramble to pass the war on poverty plan.